Hey guys, Scott and Vanessa Martindale here with Blended Kingdom Families. At BKF, we believe now is the time to change the modern day interpretation of the blended family.
Absolutely, you guys. As a blended family ourselves, God laid it on our hearts to build a ministry that helps support blended families by equipping your marriage, uniting the family unit, and igniting your faith. Our mission is that you would be touched by God and experience His goodness through this ministry, that your family would have practical skills, resources, and tools to help you live that abundant blended life.
Hey guys, Scott and Vanessa Martindale here with Blended Kingdom Families. So glad that you're with us today. We are going to be talking to an amazing guest on an unbelievable topic. So welcome, Dr. Les Carter. It is wonderful to see you again.
Yes.
Well, and two of my favorite people. Thank you for having me with you. And I'm so pleased with what you're doing with your ministry too. I think it's really a necessary thing that you're doing. So thanks for what you're doing too.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Carter is one of our favorite people.
Yes.
We absolutely love him. He's a great guy.
Yes, he is. Yeah. Well, guys, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Dr. Carter. He is an author and psychotherapist specializing in anger management and narcissistic personality disorder, which is what we are going to dive into today. He's also a father and husband, and he's married to his lovely wife, Jennifer. Just a little bit about his background. You guys, he's been in counseling for 40 years. He has 40 years of experience. So as a future therapist and as a LPC yourself, we have a lot to learn from Dr. Carter, and we just love the wisdom and knowledge that he gives. So he spent his first 25 years with the Minirth-Meyer Clinic in Dallas, last 15 years at Southlake Psychiatric and Counseling Center, which he co-founded also. Author of 20 books, including The Anger Trap, When Pleasing You is Killing Me, and he's the creator of the YouTube channel Surviving Narcissism, which has like 375,000 subscribers, and your videos have had over 40 million views accumulative. I mean, that is just phenomenal. Wow. You have a bachelor's from Baylor University and a PhD from the University of North Texas, and he's certified by the American Association of Marriage and Family Therapists and licensed professional counselor in Texas. So, wow, Dr. Carter.
That is a lot to say for a man who looks so humble, and we know you to be so humble. Such an amazing credential.
Yeah.
And, and when you say I've had 40 years of experience, what you're saying is the guy's old.
young at heart. And we forgot to introduce Gus, the famous puppy dog of Dr. Carter, who's not with us today, but wonderful, wonderful group.
I've had Gus on my YouTube videos. When I'm on the videos, sometimes Gus is in there, and when he's not, it's like, I don't care what you said on the video. Where's Gus? He's probably under my desk, but he's not with me today. He's on with Mom.
Oh, wonderful. Well, Dr. Carter, beyond your experience, just tell us a little bit about whatever you want to tell us about yourself and your background.
I'm a twin, and I have a younger sister as well, and this is true. Now, just hang in there with me. I like to say I was born in a family where my dad was in and out of prison my entire childhood. Dad was a prison chaplain. So that's my good line. And I was exposed to all, and through the bulk of my childhood, he was actually a consultant to chaplains. Yeah. And so I was exposed to a lot of people who were down and out all through my childhood. And one of the things that was emphasized growing up is, everybody has a backstory.
Yeah.
And if you had the exact same backstory as someone else, might you have had some of the same struggles as they do? Let's figure out what that means, and let's approach it in as much of a gracious and open-minded way as possible. And, when you're a little kid and that's being spoken to you, it's like, yeah, that made a lot of sense. I learned how to be judgmental much later, but it's, you learn people are mistake makers, and aren't we all? And
absolutely.
When I went to college, it was just no coincidence that I was led to psychology and the world of counseling, and I had wonderful mentors along the way. I mean, I could go on and on about all of that, but what I have is inside of my mind is the result of really good teaching and mentoring, like I say. And when I was with Menard Meyer, we did a lot of radio, and we've done, all sorts of writing and things of that nature. So I've been blessed in that kind of way. And now, we've got the YouTube, and it's just been phenomenal how it's just taken off and gone.
Yeah.
And so, I'm just pleased to be able to do the work that I do, and everything I think, say, and do is filtered through my spiritual lens, and how I understand who God is and what it means. To me, Christianity is less about having the correct beliefs, and it's more about character development. I'm not saying beliefs are wrong, of course, but I'm just saying it's that change of the inner person. And I do believe that whatever set of circumstances we have, there are ways that we can engage with it in a growth and in a transforming kind of way.
Yeah.
So that's the mindset that I bring with me as I work with my people in my counseling office.
Absolutely.
So good.
And the topic that we're going to talk about today, I feel like it's one of those that gets thrown around a lot without any real knowledge behind it. So we're going to be talking about narcissism, and it's definitely your forte and what you teach on your YouTube channel. So as one of the leading experts on narcissistic personality disorder, just explain to our audience, maybe from a clinical standpoint, what is NPD?
Well, we could go on for a long time on that. Let me kind of give you that. Of course, we have the old Greek mythology story where Narcissus was going through the forest, and he comes upon a pond, and he looks down, and he becomes enamored with what he sees as his own reflection in the pond. And he's so enamored with himself, he's unable to tear himself away. And narcissism, based on that, is defined, or the beginning point is just being enamored with oneself. And so when we talk about narcissism, there are actually several categories or subcategories we look for. One is that sense of feeling like you're very special. You're unique beyond what you really are. You want to be superior. You have an attitude of entitlement. And then narcissists are individuals who have very high control needs. And they want to be in that superior position. They're ridiculously thin-skinned. You can't talk with them about things because they have to have the final word, and so they're highly defensive in the way you engage with them. They operate with what I call an alternate reality. I imagine that some of the people that are watching this can say, yeah, I've been with this person that I tried to explain things, and they'll look at me and say, I don't know what you're talking about, because they have such entirely different explanations for what seems to be entirely different to you. So they're very difficult. And I explained that narcissism is a pattern of life that's on a spectrum. Every one of us can have some of those moments where we get a little bit too enamored with oneself, or we want to be in control, or we become defensive and we have entitled attitudes. Those of us who are trying to be on what I call team healthy recognize it, we own it, and we can keep it contained. And if I can use kind of a numerical analogy, I can keep my tendencies down at the 20% level, let's say. But when we talk about NPD, or the narcissistic personality disorder, these are individuals who allow those kind of characteristics just to completely define who they are. They don't have containment of it. It runs away with them. And some may be at the 40% level, but then 60 or 70 or 90% level, if we can use that analogy, and it's just completely taken over. And so when you're dealing with those kind of people, you're constantly feeling like you're running into a brick wall. It's like, well, I want to talk with you, and I want to engage with you in such a way where we can discuss whatever pluses and minuses we need to talk about in our relationship. But if that person has a strong narcissistic bent, then it's like, we're just not getting anywhere good. And you have circular arguments and all that goes with it.
Let me ask you a question on follow-up on that. I think a lot of folks in our blended family community find themselves thinking that their ex-spouse is narcissistic. But my question is do people who have narcissistic behaviors, at what level do they have the ability to turn that off and on? Because they weren't always narcissistic. They became narcissistic or had narcissistic tendencies maybe after they had split. But in your experience, do people have the ability to turn that on and off?
Big time.
Okay.
And by the way, many people, when they use the word narcissist or narcissism, it's kind of like it's their shorthanded way of saying, I don't like you.
Yeah.
And narcissism is not that. I don't like you, so I'm going to come up with an ugly name. You're a narcissist. And so understand that when I'm talking about this, I'm talking about a pattern of life. And as I just insinuated, we can have measures of narcissism. Sometimes individuals who have this pattern, they can be quite charming.
Mm-hmm.
And friendly and pleasant, and they can ask you questions about who you are and what's going on, and you're thinking to yourself, well, this is a very delightful person. Now, the sad thing might be that as they're engaging in that kind of way, it's part of a setup. You just don't know, because later on, they may be harsh and insensitive, and you're thinking, where did that person come from? And so there's kind of a chameleon effect that many of these people can have. And in fact, I did a video that was entitled something to the effect of the number one way to determine if you're with a narcissist, and it's watch how they deal with conflict. I can be really nice to you when you're friendly and you agree with me and you think that I'm funny and we are working on a project and we have similar ideas. But when you and I have conflict, that's when you're going to see the real person show up. And narcissistic individuals will take the differences and they will mush it up in an awful kind of way. There can be the accusations and the shaming and the argumentative and the name calling and circular arguments and things of that nature. Or if you're more of a covert type of narcissist, you can go into the silent treatment and promise to do things and then you don't. And so when you see what a person is like in their moments of conflict, that's when you get an idea of what you're dealing with relative to that word narcissist and narcissism. And so, yes, we can turn it on, we can turn it off, but typically when the hard stuff comes, that's when you're going to see who a person really is.
Yeah.
Got it.
Absolutely.
So what are, I guess, some of the signs and behaviors of someone who is a narcissist, Dr. Les Carter? What are some things, if people are sitting here thinking, well, I think I might be dealing with one, but I'm not sure, but they have these erratic behaviors, what are some signs that would show that someone could have that personality disorder?
Well, let me just kind of throw out some phrases that you might hear someone say. They may say, we can talk and talk, and I feel like I'm running into a brick wall. Okay, that would be something. Or every time I think I'm saying something that makes sense, that person flips it around on me. Okay, that would be another indicator. Or this is the most defensive person I've ever dealt with in my life. That would be an indicator. Or, well, this person, they talk a good game and they promise to work with me, and then they don't. Or they fill me full of shame or agitation, and they have a bad temper. I mean, so there are all sorts of things of that nature. And I go back to my opening comments when I say that the narcissist is highly controlling. Those are control tactics, and being critical, being agitated, being evasive. All of those are elements of control. And so the more you see those types of scenarios, you find yourself having those kind of reactions, you're probably dealing with somebody that's got some pretty strong narcissistic tendencies.
Well, and as we look at, the blended family community and we look at, ways that we co-parent, if somebody just heard that and said, you know what, I think that's my situation. How do you suggest for the family, how do they co-parent the best with somebody who is narcissistic?
Okay, that's probably one of the most common types of questions that I get, and it's also one of the most difficult, because what happens when let's say that you're the kind of person that's committed to all the non-narcissistic characteristics, and that would be fair-mindedness, showing respect, being able to discuss conflicts in a constructive kind of way, being a good listener. You know, narcissists have very, very low levels of empathy. So let's suppose that you're committed to all the healthy kinds of ingredients, and then that other person just keeps doing the opposite. Or I've had so many cases where, let's say that one parent is trying to have discipline and boundaries and standards inside the home, and that narcissistic person can come along and say, "Oh, you don't need to listen to your mother on that," or "That's ridiculous," or "Sure, I'll help you out on it," and then they don't, or they just argue in front of you, or they when it's their turn to discipline the kids, they start yelling at them, or they don't follow through, and then the question is, what do you do? And many people, when they ask that question, what do you do? What they're really thinking is, how do I change that narcissistic person and make that person not be narcissistic? And the answer there is, well, unfortunately, you're rather limited. You're not able to change someone who doesn't want to change.
Yeah.
So yes, it's reasonable if you're that parent who has another parent who's not at all easy to get along with. It's reasonable to talk to that other parent and say, "May I share with you why I'm doing this, or why I emphasize that?" And you want to do your very best. And then if they don't, then what you do is you decide, well, on my 50% of the equation, this kid in front of me is going to get the very best that I have to offer. And then sometimes, and this is a really delicate thing, sometimes as you're talking with the kids, particularly as they age, let's say late grade school and certainly into adolescence, you go ahead and start openly acknowledging to the child the differences that you have between yourself and that other more difficult parent. Now there's a bad way to do it, which is, well, you know, your dad, he's the most impossible person to deal with, and I don't know what we're going to do with him. You can denigrate the other person,
Right.
or you can say something like, well, your mother, she's just so anxious, anxiety ridden. Let's not do that. But what you can do is, as you speak to the kids, you can let it be known, sometimes with that other parent, I know that such and such is emphasized, or that you have these habits or patterns. Why don't we agree that when it's with you and me, we're going to emphasize other kinds of things? And this is what I want to let you know what I stand for. These are my convictions. And so when it's you and me, here's how we're going to go about it. Now, you're not necessarily saying it, but the rest of the story is, well, when the other parent comes along, we're going to have some problems. But and I'll let it be known. If you sometimes feel confused, I'd like for you to come and talk with me and let me know what you're feeling. And so you want to have that presence that says, somebody in this equation needs to be fair-minded and reasonable and logical and empathetic, and I want to be that person. And you can't afford to go into your high agitation and irritability and blaming kind of mode, and especially you don't want to insult the other parent. One study after another with blended families shows that the best way to really mess up a kid in that situation is to speak poorly of the other parent. That's the single most destructive thing that you can do. And so you speak well as much as you're able. Just what did you and the other parent do this weekend? And you speak into that in a positive way. If you don't agree, you just say, well, we do think differently. Here's how I'd like to handle it. And you don't dwell on all the harsh negatives, even as you point out what your better alternatives are. It's an incredibly delicate balancing act that you have to maintain.
Yeah, and that's such good practical advice, because we have people reach out all the time, and one of the big things that we teach about is, do not talk negatively about the other parent in front of the child. But dealing with an ex-spouse who may have those narcissistic tendencies, it could be a little bit more challenging, but approaching it in the delicate way as you were speaking is so good, because I think it just gives people, it gives them just a tool in their tool belt.
Let me give you an illustration, okay?
Yes.
You may be able to tell I'm at my office right now, and earlier today, I had a mom, and she's roughly 60-ish, and the son is roughly 30-ish. And the mom and dad have gone through divorce within the last year or two, and dad was an incredibly difficult person all the way through. And now the 30-year-old young man is saying to his mother, Mom, I always knew that you were the one that I could talk to. And I know when Dad had his outbursts, I know that it really bothered you, and now I'm so glad that you and I are able to kind of talk things through. And it was so much tonic to this woman to hear her now 30-year-old son go back and revisit from 20 years past and say, you know, Mom, I now I can tell you in a way that I couldn't when I was 10 years old. Thank you for being the steady one.
Wow.
Thank you for being the rock.
Yeah.
And so when you're with that 10 or 12 or 7-year-old kid, you want to think in terms of 10 and 15 and 20 years down the road. What are they going to remember?
Yeah.
And I'm hoping they remember that I was a parent of character and fairness and respect. And especially, I'm going to go back to conflict, especially when conflicts came up. That's when I really made my biggest push to show we can still have decency and objectivity here.
It's good.
Yeah.
It's good.
No, I love it. What about, and I'm going to go back to these situations where, you know, you may be dealing with somebody who's narcissistic in terms of an ex-spouse. How do you set those boundaries with somebody who is narcissistic? How would you suggest that you be in the best place mentally and emotionally when dealing with that?
Well, may I kind of turn the question on you? Can you give me an illustration?
Sure. Well, I think, again, I'm going to go to the ex-spouse scenario where you're dealing with a spouse who may be narcissistic. But you're also dealing with the sensitivity of raising children. So you know that is incredibly important. And we teach on this a lot for parents to be on the same page and how important that is, whether it's discipline or whether that's continuity of schedule, things like that. But if you're dealing with a narcissistic spouse, and aside from speaking well of them, how do you practically deal with that personality if it's right in front of you all the time?
Okay, let's start with what not to do.
Okay.
Let's keep in mind that narcissists, one of the defining features is the need to be in control. And so there's an incredibly high probability that person on the other side is going to come at you with criticism or, well, I don't think that's right at all. I don't know where you came up with that, and argumentative. And before you know it, you find yourself defending yourself. Well, the reason I did is because this, that, and the other. Now, when you're dealing with a narcissist, virtually never are you going to hear that person say, oh, thanks for that great perspective.
Yeah.
They won't do it. It's not in their vocabulary. And so what you do is you establish, when we talk about boundaries, we're talking about establishing your well-conceived definition, your well-conceived belief about who you are. And so with that narcissistic other parent, you let it be known, well, when I'm with Junior, here's what I'm going to emphasize. And these are the plans that we're going to make. And then when that narcissistic other parent is over there saying, well, I think you're stupid and you can't do something like that, rather than defending or trying to convince them of how improper they are, you can let it be known, I'm aware of that. I realize you think that, which is why we got a divorce. And so I understand. Nonetheless, here's the decision that I've made.
Yeah.
And you don't go into the debate, because they absolutely love it when you start debating, because it's like, okay, now you're giving me some stuff that I can play with. And they will. And so you want to have a sense of certainty, or let's call it comfort or confidence on the inside of you that says, I really am a reasonable person. And I know that this person that's my counterpart may think that I'm a complete and total buffoon. And that's certainly their prerogative. They may think that way. But I know differently. And so when we differ, I'm going to hold firmly. I'm going to let it be known, these are my preferences. I'd like for you, if you would, to work with me. And when they say I won't, well, then that's still my belief. And then you just kind of let it be known, if you're trying to engage with me in a way that I'm going to get down and dirty with you, then I'm not going to play that game. Have you heard the old analogy? When you jump in the pig pen and wrestle with a pig, you get muddy and the pig has a real good time. And I'm not going to jump into that pig pen.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it.
That's great.
No, that's so good.
So it becomes it's a mindset that you carry with you. This person does not set my pace.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. Dr. Carter, we have a lot of people reach out to our ministry, and I think a lot of it has to do with, on the mental health side, because Scott is an LPC and I'm in school. We've had a lot of people reach out about MPD and dealing with, ex-spouses or stepchildren who are suffering with that. But anyone that's listening today, what encouragement would you just want to give them or impart to them if they are, in a difficult relationship with someone who has those tendencies or has that disorder? What would you want to encourage them with?
So much of the way that we get pulled into the trap is we engage with what I refer to as mythical thinking. And you're in mythical thinking if you use phrases like, why can't you just, or I just wish, or it seems to me like. And we have this notion that says, I know there's a much better way of doing things. Let's go there. And when you ask, well, how do I deal with that person knowing that that's what it is? It's kind of like, well, you kind of have to drop that mythical thinking and live with what I refer to as ugly truth. And this sounds pessimistic, but it's not really. It sort of is, but kind of not. To say, build in pessimism. And you can say, build in pessimism, and that's a positive. And it's like, yeah, ultimately it is. I know this person is argumentative. I know this person thinks way too highly of themselves, and they've got these control things, and you can't tell them anything new. They don't have any empathy. I get it. And I understand it. And so you drop the illusion that you're going to be the one person that's going to reform them. And when you accept that as your truth, and you quit trying to, make an alligator something other than being an alligator, then you just say, okay, this being my truth, I'm going to proceed knowing what I'm up against. And so you're much more reality based as opposed to wish based in the way that you approach with them.
What would you say, and I just want to flip this around just a minute, because I think a lot of people may listen to this and go, well, yeah, that's happening over there. But let's be, real. Sometimes some people who are listening to this right now may suffer from narcissistic behavior. They may be listening to us going, you know what, I kind of think that describes me.
Yeah.
What would you tell them in terms of how do people seek help from this?
Actually, when a person can say, I think that describes some of me, that's usually the first indicator that this person's probably not a deep narcissist. Because narcissists, they'll say, yeah, it's you, all right. It's not me. And so, what you do is you own it. It's like, that person over there has some narcissistic tendencies. And just as I mentioned at the very beginning, we all have some elements, and I need to be honest about what I do.
Yeah.
And sometimes I want to respond to their control with counter control. Or sometimes if you're argumentative, I'll get argumentative too. Or if you're non-cooperative, I'll show you what that looks like. And so what you want to do is you want to ask yourself, well, do I just want to be a mirror image of that person that I am having difficulty with? Or might I be the one that says I have a much better way? And so humility, empathy, and all, and that doesn't preclude firmness, by the way. You can still have your firmness, you can have boundaries, you can have stipulations. You want to be the change that the other person is not going to have. And while we're there, let me address another really, really large thing, and that is people who are in that growth mode. Dealing with that highly narcissistic person will eventually experience a great deal of emotional fatigue. It's like, I'm tired of having to be the mature person. I'm tired of me being the one that's trying to be the good guy here when that other individual just keeps slopping it up.
Yeah.
And my response is, well, okay, so what if you decide that you'll stop being that mature person? Now what do we have?
Yeah.
Now we have nobody being healthy. And it's like, sometimes as weary as it may be, I'd rather be an honorable and respectful and dignified person, knowing that I'm not going to get much reciprocal effort, but I don't want to be anything else. I'm a free human being. I get to be anything I want to be, and I don't want to be that other person's style.
Yeah.
And so it very much requires you to go down to the who am I, how do I define myself mode, and then know that it's not just an assignment, but it's just embedded in what you are.
Yeah. 100%.
That's good.
Hey friends, we hope that this episode is blessing your socks off right now, and we just want to take an opportunity to talk about partnering together. If Blended Kingdom Families has touched your marriage and touched your blended family in some way, we'd love to partner with you.
At Blended Kingdom Families, we're trying to reach as many blended families as possible, and we can do more with your support. So please take an opportunity to visit blendedkingdomfamilies.com and click partner. Hope you enjoy the rest of the episode.
Well, Dr. Carter, we're wrapping up, but one of the questions that we like to ask at the end of every podcast episode, the ministry, Blended Kingdom Families, when you hear that name, what do you think of, or what resonates with you? What's a Blended
Kingdom Families, you mean?
Yes.
Is that what you're asking? We're all interconnected, aren't we? And when you're having to blend in a divorce or some other form kind of a way, what it says is we each bring our unique experiences of highs and lows, pluses and minuses. But then when you throw that word in family, it's no coincidence that Scripture is full of metaphors about family. God as Father, etc. And we can pull together. Yeah. And the good news is it can be a very large tent. Yeah. And so I'd like as many people to be in that family with me as we can.
Yep.
And so let's think in those kind of terms and know that we have a God who smiles and who says, hey, I like that. Way to go, my son or my daughter, family.
Yeah.
So I love your term, blended kingdom family, where we all have the privilege to be in the same kingdom together. And it comes down to who would like to join.
Yeah.
Good. I love that.
Well, Dr. Carter, you are truly a great wisdom, and we appreciate your time, appreciate your knowledge, and you loving and caring about families and your time here.
Yes, and Dr. Carter, can you just tell our audience where they can find you? I know you have a podcast also, and
well, okay, here we've got the Surviving Narcissism YouTube. We also have survivingnarcissism.tv. That's our website, and this has a ton of articles. And then I also have my drlescarter.com.
Yeah.
And we have all sorts of workshops and seminars that you can avail yourself to in my books and things like that. It's got all my resources on there. And, I love what I do. And I want to get it out there. And if people find it to be helpful, then I'm honored that they would find that to be something that I get to be a part of their journey with them.
No, absolutely, absolutely. And before we jump off, we were talking about this earlier. One fun fact about Dr. Carter: if any of you are listening or watching and you have gone through the divorce care class in your church, Dr. Carter was actually a big part of that. And so if he looks familiar, or if,
Hey, Vanessa, actually there were two iterations of that.
Okay.
One was in the early 90s, and then one, they redid it. Steve Grissom, the guy that put it together, called me and said, hey, you want to do it again? And so when people say, hey, Dr. Carter, I saw you in the divorce care class. My question is, well, did I have dark hair or did I have what I call ultimate blonde?
Yeah, that's awesome.
But that's a great ministry.
Yeah.
And I'm just honored to be a part of that too.
Yes,
Absolutely.
Steve is wonderful. We met with him about a week ago. Thanks to you and the connection. And
Oh,
Yeah.
great.
Yes.
He's the gold standard.
yes,
Yeah,
he's
absolutely.
wonderful. Wonderful. Well, thank you again so much, Dr. Carter, for your time and your just your wisdom and knowledge to share on, narcissistic personality disorder. I know a lot of people in our audience, can really benefit from what they heard today, whether they're dealing with that in their personal relationship or outside of their family. So we just thank you for that.
I'm honored that you would have me. Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Vanessa.
Yes.
Guys, thanks so much for joining us, and Dr. Carter for being with us. We hope you've enjoyed this. Have a wonderful, wonderful day.
Yes, guys, be blessed in all that you do. Mwah.
Hey BKF community, we want to hear from you guys. If you would take the time to leave us a review, and you can find us on all social media platforms. Our podcast is on every podcast platform, and you can visit us at our website at www.blendedkingdomfamilies.com.
Yeah, guys, we're trying to reach every blended family all over the world, and we can't do this without your partnership. So please take a minute, like, share, comment, review, tell your friends. Tell them they can all go to blendedkingdomfamilies.com for great resources.